And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go.
Hello again, and welcome to American Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, and I want to thank Dave. Debuting this week at number 36.
Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very, very high above all the puerile and pedantic forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to this Tuesday installment of the program. It is the summer of love again. Oh, don't you remember the whole summer where we had to endure BLM riots and police stations burning down and the cops in several American cities not doing anything about it? Well, now we have L.A. burning to the ground. But don't worry. None of it's violent. None of it is violent. You don't have to worry about being endangered. You don't have to worry about your car being smashed or burned to the ground because all of these protests are mostly peaceful. Play cut number one.
Most of the afternoon and evening demonstrations have been going on right outside the federal detention center. Most of those demonstrations were very peaceful. They were chanting, they were shouting. Most people we've seen most of the evening have demonstrated peacefully, but again, there are some people who are more hardcore about what they're doing out here.
A fairly peaceful protest until just a few minutes ago.
Law enforcement officers try to bring under control these elements that have become an offshoot of what was a peaceful protest and demonstration. Chaos has taken place after a otherwise peaceful demonstration earlier in the afternoon.
Many in the crowd have been demonstrating peacefully, but tonight there are still people setting off fireworks.
If you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation.
These groups come in that have nothing to do with these peaceful protesters, these poor peaceful protesters. These guys come in to take advantage of these moments, and that's exactly what we knew would happen. It's exactly what Trump knew was going to happen. That's exactly what his team knows. They help create these conditions to inflame them. This is Donald Trump's mess.
The reality is we see peaceful protests launching in Los Angeles. And again, any violence against police officers should not be accepted. Local authorities.
We all know that none of these protests are peaceful. Well, maybe they started out that way. They aren't anymore. There are stories all weekend long about cars being burned and cops being in the hospital and frozen water bottles being chucked at police officers. And now the administration has activated 700 Marines and are going to send them in. But the problem is that 700 Marines, as talented as they are way outnumbered by the amount of protesters. But they're in. What do you do? My guess is we have to restore order some way. Or we just let it burn to the ground, which, in some cases, downtown L.A., or the ghetto in L.A., I don't know. I mean, maybe we should let it burn to the ground. But what do you do, Agent 29? I mean, do you send in the military and just give them the green light and let them roll? Or, I mean, what do you do here?
It'd probably take 2 divisions. I mean,
tanks. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we've seen a few of these other things. You remember after Katrina?
Oh, yeah.
When they were doing all the looting and the rioting and everything. I guess I'm a proponent of the stand back and let them burn it down.
Well, they obviously want to.
Yeah, because if you jump in there, any amount of force that it would actually take to stop it is going to be deemed as very heavy-handed or, playing right into their narrative. I just step back and let it go, and about the time it starts to work its way up toward Hollywood and some of the nicer homes, there'll be a little more interested in quelling this.
Well, it's kind of like Martha's Vineyard and the immigrant flights, where Texas sent a plane load of illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, where before they were saying, "Oh, we are the sanctuary community. We welcome all of these immigrants. They're just like you and me. I mean, they're just, there's no difference." And then the immigrants show up, and it didn't take a day, and all those rich people on Martha's Vineyard were getting the illegal aliens the heck out of their business. But it's very much the same thing. Is that you have a huge percentage of illegal aliens in California. And why have they chose to reside there? Simply because the state of California has offered them medical benefits, that they've offered them free college tuition. I mean, you start offering those things, people are going to gravitate there. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, you see all the pictures. We had one up a minute ago, waltzing around with the Mexican flag, burning American flags, trampling them. Why are you here?
Well, exactly
Mexico
right.
is so great. What are you doing here?
Well,
and that's exactly it. It's the free stuff.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing, Ken, is they're burning down an American city and waving a flag from a country that they just left. I mean, how absolutely contradictory could you possibly get? I just think that none of these things are organic, and I don't think that anytime the left riots that any of that stuff is organic. I think that it's spurred, and I've got a piece here that we're going to go to that kind of makes that same argument.
Yeah, well, we keep saying, this is an invasion.
It is.
And everybody, oh, no, that's ridiculous. Well, look at the pictures.
Look at the pictures. It looks like downtown Beirut.
Sure looks like an invasion to me. You got foreign flags coming in and replacing American flags. And
the American flags that are there are being burned.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, and here's the other thing. If this, just imagine for a second that this wasn't an American city, that it wasn't downtown L.A., and that it really was, I don't know, Beirut, or it was, Kabul, or pick any other city in the world, London, for example, Paris. If this same sort of thing were happening, it would be terrorism. That's what it would be. When you have a giant group of people burning down the city, that's terrorism. And how would we deal with that? Would we just say, go ahead and loot the stores and nothing's going to happen? Would we not throw people in jail? Or when police officers are attacked, would they not open fire? In any other place, this would be terrorism. But you just heard I just played for you Gavin Newsom and Cory Booker and all those people saying, well, this are really just, peaceful protests. There's really no problem here. But here's a piece from, let's see here. I can't remember where I got it. I'll find the name here. But the piece is entitled, Advocacy Group at the Heart of Anti-ICE Protests in L.A. has long raised money through Act Blue. And I quote, an advocacy group at the center of organizing efforts of the anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles has long raised money through Act Blue, the controversial Democratic Party-oriented nonprofit entity that is under investigation by the U.S. DOJ. According to the social media pages of the Coalition of Human Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, the group was formed in 1986 to, quote, advance the human and civil rights of immigrants and refugees. Its mission is to educate, organize, and advocate. The landing page of this group's website solicits donations through another entity called Fundraise. Yeah, it's a whole heck of a lot of fun. But this group is nonetheless listed in Act Blue's official directory, and Act Blue facilitates donations through them. The far-left pro-immigrant charity's latest IRS 990 filing for 2023 shows that they had revenue close to $45 million and expenses of just over $20 million. Their tax filing does not disclose donors' names nor any specific amount that Act Blue channeled to this group. So, again, none of this stuff is organic. None of it is sparked up all on its own. It was all fomented through private groups. And I mean, you're seeing the results of it. Now, look back at other times where this has happened. Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was not an organic demonstration. It was fomented by members of the Democrat Party. The BLM riots of a couple of summers ago, where they tried to burn down Minneapolis and all that. The George Floyd riots. All of those, every single one of them, was fomented by private organizations. And, I mean, this is no different. The only difference here is you have a huge amount of people that are literally clashing with police. So I don't know what the solution to this is, except one of two possibilities, like Agent 29 said, let it burn to the ground, or B, set up a big compound. Those are your options.
There's not a quick solution. I think it's interesting that they want to turn it around and claim that this is Trump's mess. This is Trump's fault.
Of course it is.
I mean, here's a man that says we're going to obey the law, we're going to obey the Constitution, and they're throwing a fit. Their argument is not really with Trump. Their argument's with the law.
Absolutely.
So try to change the law. And incidentally, not that I want to get into this topic, that's what's happening in Wyoming right now with gun-free zones, for example. There are a lot of people that are throwing a fit because those of us who stood up and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution
are actually doing
shall
that.
not be denied. We're doing what we were hired to do, and we're horrible people.
Well, this is we are living in a lawless society. You know, the Democrats over and over, they claim that no one is above the law. Really? Well, if that is true, then Gavin Newsom, that Bass lady, excuse me, I shouldn't use the term lady so loosely, but they need to be arrested and prosecuted. If you break the law, you need to be prosecuted. I don't know if you heard over the weekend, Tom Homan, maybe you've got that soundbite.
I have the one that precipitated. Let me pull it up here.
No, anyway, while you're getting ready, let me just preface it, if this is the one I was thinking of. But over the weekend, Tom Homan gave a brief interview where he was asked about these protests. And he just said, you know, the Democrats have been saying for 4 years that no one is above the law. They prosecuted Donald Trump. So why shouldn't we prosecute Gavin Newsom and Bass and all of these people that are allowing all this stuff to happen? Gavin,
massive ICE raids are happening in Los Angeles County, where I live, by the way. And I just want to say, this isn't what I voted for.
Okay, this isn't that one, but this is worth living. This is a guy sitting in his truck.
Okay.
He lives in that area, and he's got a response to that. That soundbite I deleted before because it got so
crazy.
It did. So I'm gonna start this one over, but it's fortuitous that I had it here.
Okay.
Massive ICE raids are happening in Los Angeles County, where I live, by the way. And I just want to say, this isn't what I voted for. It's what you voted for when you elected Joe Biden, when you let 20 million illegal immigrants come over the border. What did you expect to happen? You thought we were just going to sit back and take it? No. This is the course of action that happens when you do dumb crap like that. So just remember, when you're talking about, oh my God, Trump's a dictator, this is what you voted for. No, mother trucker, it's what you voted for. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, no, he's exactly right. And this is exactly what the Democrats voted for when they put Joe Biden into office, and he over and over made the claim, well, you know, everybody's welcome here. Read the Statue of Liberty. Okay, I don't really give a crap what that poem says on the Statue of Liberty. That's not the policy of the United States. If you come here legally and if you attempt to become a citizen, yeah, sure, the country is your oyster. But when the first act you commit in entering this country is to break our law, you get to be deported. And I am so sick and tired of this god-awful lie that everybody gets due process. No, citizens get due process. If you are an illegal alien, you get a process, but it is not due process. Oh, it's due. Yeah. Your process is coming due, but it's not the due process you think of. But this entire thing, there's only a couple of ways that this is going to go. And, if Gavin Newsom and Bass and all them want to burn L.A. to the ground, I'm half tempted to say let them do it. But I would rather us restore law and order, if that's possible, and hold those people accountable that committed all of this property destruction. And every single one of them, prosecute them all, including Gavin Newsom. Let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, I want to talk about having arguments or discussions with Democrats and why that so often goes nowhere. Well, it's because of, call it Trump derangement syndrome, call it whatever you want, but it's ridiculous. And so we're going to talk about that coming up next. There's no point in arguing with a Democrat about Donald Trump. They just won't listen to you. I don't know why, but anyway, we'll do that when we come back. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
It's Cowboy State Politics. You can listen to it on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Wyoming's most listened to podcast. Beyond a doubt, there's no way anybody's ever coming close to this thing. So welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson. Let's go to Chandra in Sundance. Chandra, what do you think about all these protests?
Well, I guess first off, I want to say I was in D.C. on January 6th.
Oh, you criminal.
I know, right? And it was nothing like the media portrayed.
How so?
I mean, the pictures, well, like all the pictures that they shared and stuff. I mean, they took the smallest incidences and blew them out of proportion. Most of the people there were like grandmas and grandpas and 40, 50-year-olds. It wasn't like what they said. So how do we know what's going on in L.A. isn't being blown out of proportion?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you saw all of the parades of burning cars during January 6th and burning down federal buildings and throwing bottles at police officers and all that. I mean, I'm sure that happened, didn't it?
Yeah. So my thing is I think we are walking a very thin line with all this because the government, no matter who's in control, they want complete control. And we blow this out of proportions. All it does is turn us against each other worse. And then you get a police state. I mean, they're calling for Palantir to go in with their creepy AI surveillance and all that stuff. That's not okay.
No, I would agree with that. But I guess the question that I would have is, what do you do? I mean, all weekend long, I watched network after network, and every single one of them had pictures of parts of LA burning down. And I skeptically watched it all. So hold on. So my question is, what do you do?
What do you do? Good question. I mean, I guess don't fall for it so fast. All we see all day, every day with the media is divide and conquer. I mean, they're trying to piss off the left and piss off the right. And I mean, honestly, the Democrats that I visit with, they're really not too far from where Republicans are. They want freedom, you know. I mean, I think division is like a huge issue in this country, and I think we just need to settle down about it a little bit, because that's how you get a police state going.
No, I think that I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Like, take the jab for your safety, you know. I mean, I worry about that.
Well, and I agree with you that we've got some pretty big differences of opinion. But the story that I'm going to talk about, like right up next, is with some Democrats, there's really no point in arguing about President Trump. I agree. I've got two thoughts on this. First, I know some people who are, I would characterize, well, let's be honest, just about everybody is to the left of me. I'm joking. But I would characterize as pretty liberal Republicans. And then I've gone down to the protests downtown Sheridan and talked with some of these protesters, and I may as well be talking to the wall. I mean, there's no reason, there's no logic, there's no facts that you could present them that they would believe in. So here's my question for you, Chandra. So if you're dealing with a group of people that refuse to look at facts, refuse to have an honest conversation, like, how do we bridge that gap? I mean, if you're talking to somebody and they don't want to listen to the truth, then it's kind of hard to have a conversation. But how do we get past that?
Well, how do we get to the truth?
Good question.
It's also skewed. I honestly have been watching social media, and I have seen people that I stood shoulder to shoulder with over the last 4 years, saying that they should just start shooting, the protesters, and they should send in the drones. Yeah, and it's like, and honestly, you know what? I am so glad I went to the Capitol on January 6th, because I saw firsthand what lying, scum, jackbooted media can do.
Absolutely.
I didn't believe them anyways, but that really opened my eyes. But the thing that really got to me the worst is how my fellow Americans turned on me. And it wasn't just the left. There was your more center Republicans,
Yeah.
Chandra,
just as much as the Democrats.
Chandra, this is Agent 29. I just wanted to cut in. You were talking about how do we find the truth. I was in a meeting in Casper not too long ago, and a number of people who were opposed to specifically the Freedom Caucus and things we were trying to do. We're talking about the gun-free zones issue. And I had quoted the Wyoming Constitution, which says that you're not going to be denied, no citizen is going to be denied the right to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state. Period. That's what it says. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. And when their response then, but this is a school. So,
Yeah.
and I agree with David. And
don't protect our kids.
Yeah, I agree with David. And you get to a point, and you've laid out the law. You've laid it. It doesn't matter anymore. And so David's absolutely right when he says this. We've just gotten to a lawlessness. We don't care what the law says. We don't care what the Constitution says. We just care about how we feel. And when it gets to that point, there's really nothing you can do other than force, and that's where you're right, Chandra, is we invite a police state when there's no other thing that anybody will listen to.
Yeah, well, but then you go back to, is it as bad as what they're trying to make us believe?
I don't know. I think when you see a bunch of burning cars, that's pretty bad.
Well, I saw some pretty raunchy photos of things that supposedly went on at the Capitol, and I mean, it just depends on who's telling the story, you know. I mean, I saw, where they added sound and stuff to a lot of the videos on January 6th. My phone, honestly, was jammed on January 6th when I was there because I tried to go live and I couldn't. And I don't think that was by coincidence.
No, probably not.
You do have a really good point, and I would just relate to you one time, and this is kind of secondhand. We were over in Desert Storm, and a particular unit was supposed to cross the border. They went across the border, and the CNN reporters came up to them and said, "Would you go back and come across again? We didn't quite have the camera angle we wanted." And they did it.
Yeah, well, it's all such crap. I mean, that's just like, do you remember, speaking of, well, it wasn't Desert Storm, but, after 9/11, the CIA couldn't find Osama bin Laden, but CNN did. Remember, they went and interviewed him in a cave? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't know one way or the other, but all I can think of is behind one of those masks is probably Rayettes. Waving the Mexican flag.
Probably. Well, thanks for the call, Shanda. We appreciate it, and I think that you're absolutely right. Keep listening to Cowboy State Politics. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If you have some thoughts about all this bull crap that's happening in Los Angeles, go ahead and give me a call. Make sure we throw up the number on the screen. All right, good. All right, so 307-374-8989. Now, in my estimation, there is very little point in arguing with some Democrats. And here's why I say that. If you are unable to look at a set of facts and we can't agree on them, there's very little discussion that's going to happen afterwards. In order to have a debate or a discussion or an argument, and by argument I mean a debate, really, another word for it. I don't mean the kind where you scream and yell at your kids. That's not an argument. That's screaming and yelling. But if we're going to have a debate, if we're going to discuss issues, if we're going to try to come to any sort of solution, we have to be able to agree on a certain set of facts and a certain set of definitions. If we can't agree on that, then there's really no point. So, Agent 29, you brought up a little bit earlier how you read a portion of the Constitution to a group of people at that meeting, and they just completely disregarded it. But it's a school, but it's a preschool, but it's a church, but it's but it's an anthill. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, if we can't agree on what something says and what the law is, then there's very little discussion. So this is from a guy named J.C. Bork, and I quote, there is not a single fact, much less a body of them, that you and a lefty can agree upon to start a conversation about Donald Trump. Now, I don't know that I would go all that far. I mean, it's just over the weekend on Saturday, I had a guy, Justin Robert Young, on the show, and after listening to some of his podcasts before, there's a lot of things that he and I agree on, but when it comes to Donald Trump, there's a lot of things that he and I disagree on. But if we're going to have a conversation, we have to be able to look at facts. So I don't know that I would say that any Democrat, but anyhow, consuming biased media distorts what Democrats believe drives and informs conservatives. This, in fact, does not go in the other direction. Everything we know about Democrats spews ceaselessly from their lips and the major media. Everything they think they know about us comes from media propaganda, out-of-context video clips, and other loony bins who don't speak for the right. This misrepresentation results in statements to Donald Trump supporters like, "I guess you're okay with Trump turning the country into a fascist dictatorship." In addition to inviting debate about Trump's intentions, this challenges you to defend how you can be such a blind, gullible idiot, unable to see the obvious truth. And it's a lot of what comes from the left and a lot of radical Democrats is nothing more than a loaded question. A loaded question is one where you are kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. There's no correct answer to it. So, for example, Agent 29, when did you stop beating your wife? That's the classic loaded question. Okay, there's no good answer to it. And even if he says, well, I don't beat my wife, well, that wasn't the answer to the question. You see, it's entirely loaded, right? So when did you agree with Donald Trump that he was a fascist dictator? Okay, so again, same type of thing. This misrepresentation results in statements to Donald Trump supporters like that. You're okay with him turning the country into fascism. Recently, one of my left-leaning friends proposed that we attempt a civil conversation. And this actually happened with me, and I've been having coffee with this person. Actually, pretty cordial discussions, I might add, about several subjects, including climate change. Yes, I broke my own rule. This conversation was civil and respectful, but we could not agree on any scientific expert or study that we could use as a common starting point. So the conversation went nowhere concerning changing minds or openness to new information by either side. The science is settled, and arguing that settled science is an oxymoron will get you nowhere. You're a denier, and there's only one way to think. And this is the genesis of a lot of the Democratic thinking right now, that the science is settled. Well, first of all, your statement is ridiculous. The whole point in science is that you question everything and that you try to prove it. There is no settled science, nor is there any settled politics. But when you're talking with somebody who has made up their mind about a particular individual, a politician, one of their friends, whatever, and they won't accept any new information, well, the conversation is over. There's no way to go go forward.
But I would never do that. Sometimes people say, well, you're really narrow-minded. And I just say, I can afford to be, I'm right.
There you go. The other day, Agent 29 calls me, and he's got an idea for the show. And he says, well, I think it's a good idea. And I said, well, yeah, of course it is. You came up with it. So a little bit later on, and actually I may go there right now. So I've gone back and forth about the big, beautiful bill. And I think I'm right in a couple of different respects. First of all, that I hate it when Republicans do Democrat things. And one of the Democrat things we've done with the big, beautiful bill is we've slammed a whole bunch of stuff together, and we've tried to push it as one big omnibus bill. Now, if you remember the conversation we had with Jim Paff, a couple of different times, I tried to get him to admit that what the big, beautiful bill was a giant omnibus bill. The same thing that Democrats do all the time that conservatives complain about. And his response was, well, no, it's not an omnibus bill. It's a reconciliation bill. Okay, yes, that's true. The process they're using is called reconciliation. But it definitely fits the definition of an omnibus bill. When you take a bunch of unrelated stuff and slam it into one bill that ends up being 1,000 pages, and you drop it on somebody's desk at midnight and say, we're going to vote on this at 8 in the morning, that is exactly what Democrats do. However, over the weekend, I read a piece that was, I think I got it from The Blaze, and I've kind of changed my opinion a little bit about the big, beautiful bill. I am willing to accept new information that perhaps changes my original perception. But the problem is, with Democrats, they are so committed to the idea that Trump is evil and Orange Man bad that they will not accept any new information that challenges or changes their original worldview. You see, Trump haters may demand from you, the hapless Trumpanzee, an explanation of how you could be so stupid. They call it a conversation, but really what it is a cross-examination. The lefty will start with some variant of, how could you vote for a sexist, racist, homophobic, convicted rapist who's guilty of all 473 felonies? That's where the conversation begins. And if you go to downtown Sheridan on Grinnell Plaza when they have these stupid protests, you will talk to people that, and I've hours of audio recorded of people engaging in the same conversation. How dare you vote for such a fascist pig? Now, I suppose you could respond, why did you vote for a vacuous, incoherent, babbling, drunken woman? But that won't work. Now, I can't really repeat what's in this article here, but why would you vote for somebody that is hapless, stupid, and can't get anything out of her mouth except word salad? But that's not going to continue the conversation either. Only Trump's and your shortcomings are on the docket. So the best thing you can do is not answer, is just to smile and say when you'd like to have a genuine conversation, let me know. Now, the mainstream media, they're the folks that are laundering all of this incorrect information and outright propaganda using, quote, unimpeachable yet anonymous sources. The New York Times will make a baseless claim about Trump or Republicans, which permits the other leftist media to endlessly repeat those claims as fact. Any journalist, and I don't really care who you are, has to use sources that remain anonymous. Sometimes that's the only way that you're going to get information. And here at Cowboy State Politics, it is no different. It is no different whatsoever. There are some people that I talk to that if I were to expose them, they would never talk to me again, that they would never give me inside information, that they would never make sure that a piece of audio they recorded at some meeting ended up in my inbox. The only way that I could refer to them is say, sources have told Cowboy State Politics. Now, if you notice, I don't do that very often because I want to report the facts and I want you to be able to verify them. But anytime you hear that on Cowboy State Politics, you know that I'm protecting a source because I have to, and there's no other way around it. If you remember the big story I did about Albert Summers and his ties to the Chinese Communist Party through the SLLF, I had a major source in Wisconsin who happened to be a former Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin. And I talked to him for hours about that topic, but he would not let me identify him. And so in the episode, it came out as my source from Wisconsin. Okay. The information is so detailed that it was really hard to question it. But my point is that the media, they don't do that. They take this anonymous source business to a whole new level. They'll write entire stories that are full of nothing but anonymous White House sources. Well, who do you know? I mean, how could you possibly know that any of those people actually exist and that it's not actual made-up propaganda? Another technique is to selectively edit the video. The Fine People hoax is a perfect example. And had I been thinking about it, I would have queued up that soundbite. But how often did you hear Trump say, oh, there was very fine people on both sides, referring to the Charlottesville riot? Over and over and over, you heard the media repeat that claim. But the truth is, that's not all of what Trump said. Right after that phrase, he goes on to talk about how horrible white supremacists are and how terrible the Nazis are and how you shouldn't pay any attention to them and how if they committed any crimes, they should be prosecuted. He went on and on and on, but the media never reported that. I mean, it is the classic example of the media distorting the whole videotape and not reporting all the facts. So repeated out-of-context video editing creates the impression that conservatives are just a bunch of uneducated hayseeds. The confirmation bias of the audience reinforces these impressions without creating any interest in finding out if they're true. So the stereotypes persist, and leftists don't know anything accurate about conservatives. The only thing they know is that if you're a conservative, you obviously can't think for yourself, and you haven't paid any attention, because clearly the educated ones know what's really happening in the country. Now, alternative media, however, like Cowboy State Politics, gives the right a steady diet of accurate information about leftists. They will often play entire rants by, and think, have you heard any of this on Cowboy State Politics? That I'll play entire rants by Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid. I've never played Don Lemon because I can't. Nope, that's not true. I have played Don Lemon, the whole Boomer Rube soundbite, and I'll see if I can find that during the break, and I'll play it for you. Now, but it's not necessary for alternative media to deceptively edit left-wing tirades. You don't have to, because they say the craziest stuff out in the open. That's how I started the show, with a whole bunch of people saying all of this stuff in L.A., they're mostly peaceful protests. The left performs better in context, and so does alternative media. We don't have to edit anything because they say the craziest stuff on their own. That's why we understand leftists so accurately, and they think that we're deplorable, ignorant, Bible-thumping gun nuts. That's exactly why. Now, if you want to know what's really going on around you, turn off the audio and use your eyes. Don't automatically accept claims made even by trusted sources. And whatever you do, don't try to argue with a leftist about Donald Trump, because you won't get anywhere. On Cowboy State Politics, I don't know how often I say this on air, but my comment is always, if it is not recorded, if you don't have a picture, if you don't have it in black and white, if you don't have any proof, it didn't happen. or at the very least, I'm not going to report on it. You're not going to hear me report on, well, I heard somebody say that somebody else said that that other person said this. You'll never hear that from me because there's no way to verify it. I can't prove to you that that's actually what happened. And if you're going to do an honest job in reporting, you have to be able to verify sources. Now, let's go all the way back to leftists. The leftists really don't care about verified sources. How often did we hear Karine Jean-Pierre say that all of the video of Joe Biden stumbling and slipping and not being able to go upstairs and downstairs was nothing but a cheap fake? It's all edited. It's not real. That didn't really happen. Now, if you got lies coming from the White House briefing room, what more can you expect from the leftist media? Let me give you another example. You remember Eric Swalwell, where he had an affair with a Chinese spy? Here he is on the Breakfast Club with this guy named Charlemagne. He calls himself Charlemagne the God, and I don't really think he's that great of an interviewer, but this is striking. Play cut number 2. Oh, do I have you muted? I don't think so. No? Oh, there we go. I had you down, not muted. Number 2, here we go.
I don't think your voters are going to keep you in, frankly.
I got a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Did the Chinese spy scandal hurt your credibility, or did Republicans just weaponize like a
listen to what he says,
burger, so to speak?
You know, the fact that the FBI and the House Ethics Committee said it was bullshit. Like,
I forgot to bleep that one out.
I would hope that would be enough, but like in a disinformation society, like I recognize that it's everyone on the right's favorite meme. My wife tells me all the time, you know what? The second they're not going after you, you're not effective.
Okay, hold on.
And so I wear it as...
There are pictures with Eric Swalwell and the Chinese spy Fang Fang. There are text messages that we have from Eric Swalwell to Fang Fang. It is a fact that he had an affair with a Chinese spy. And here he is, not that long ago, talking to, on one of the most popular morning shows in America. Well, it's disinformation. You know, the House committee said that there's nothing there. Complete bullcrap. Now, how do you argue with somebody who is willing to completely lie about it? Now, of course, what is he going to say, right? You know, of course I had an affair with a Chinese spy. But he did. The best thing that he could do is admit it and go on. He's already been kicked off I think it was on the House Intelligence Committee. And so, you know, the best thing that he could do to help his credibility would be to say, yeah, that happened. Now, let's talk about the credibility of the media. How often do you see them print a retraction? How often do you see somebody in the mainstream media come back and say, okay, I got that wrong. Here's the real truth. It doesn't happen in the Wyoming media. I can tell you that for a fact. I've only seen 2 retractions printed by the Cowboy State Daily, and both of them, I forced them to reprint, to correct what they had said. One of them, they asked me for a quote or a quotation on a particular story. I gave it to them, and when I sent it to them, it actually said, maybe I can find it, this is the exact quotation I have for you, and it's in quotation marks, and they still misquoted me. And so I called the head guy at the Cow Pie and said, you're going to fix that. Don't misquote me. And so they did. But that's only happened one other time that I know of. What they'll do instead is they'll go into the middle of the night, selectively edit their article, and so you'll never know the difference. And you can't prove that that's exactly what happened. See, that's it's one of the disadvantages of online media, that if it's printed on the internet, well, that's pretty easy to change. However, if it's recorded in audio or if it's printed on a piece of paper, it's pretty hard to go back and change that. So anyway, the media, leftist Democrats, it's very difficult to have any conversation with them. And when you're talking about the Orange Man, well, there's very little that you can discuss with them. So, for example, let's go to cut number 8. No, hold on before you play it. Cut number 8. So this is Trump in the interview with an ABC reporter named Moran. No, don't worry. Nobody else really knows what his name is. But this is kind of a compilation of that interview. Go ahead. It's kind of long, but go ahead and play number 8.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. I think he's going to be a very good hopefully a great defense secretary, but he'll be a very good defense secretary.
You have 100% confidence in
I don't
Pete
have
Hegseth.
100% confidence in anything. Okay, anything. Do I have 100%? It's a stupid question. Look,
it's a pretty important position.
No. You don't have 100%. Only a liar would say I have 100% confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to finish this interview.
We will.
Okay, so
Vladimir Putin wants
just
peace.
All right, so this whole interview, this Moran guy is combative with the president. Now, just think about this, right? You're a no-name reporter at ABC, and you get an interview with the president of the United States. There are so many things that you could ask him. Quite frankly, I have no idea which set of questions I would choose if I got an interview with President Donald Trump, but I certainly wouldn't be there like going back and forth with him. I'd want to get the facts. I'd want to make the best use of that interview as I possibly could. But Moran, he doesn't do that. All right, go ahead and play.
I think he does, yes. I think he does.
Do you trust him? Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
I am
And
happy.
then you start hitting me with fake questions. You start telling me that a guy whose hand is covered
All right,
with a
we're back to
tattoo doesn't have the tattoo, you know.
all right.
I mean, you're being dishonest.
No, I'm not.
Let me
No, I
just
am
tell
not,
you,
sir.
do I trust? I don't trust a lot of people.
Do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up, and I think we're a respected country again. We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across a stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst, I have to be honest with you.
Thank you for the opinion. Illegal.
Okay.
Elected
got more of
to take care of a problem. On his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
All right.
I saw the picture.
So this guy claims to be a journalist, and I'd never heard of him before the Trump interview. And like the president said, he picked him because, frankly, he'd never heard of him. Well, now that correspondent has been suspended by ABC News. Now, here's the thing. The media, ABC, CNN, PMSNBC, all of them are trying to pretend that they're honest journalists now. Now, for 4 years, we've been told that Trump is a fascist, that there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden, that he is at the top of his game. He is sharper than the sharpest knife in Agent 29's drawer. Nobody could be sharper than him. But now the left is trying to claim that, oh, well, you know, we just missed this whole thing. So ABC News' Terry Moran has been suspended after a wild rant against the Trump advisor, Stephen Miller. Listen to this. And again, he claims to be a journalist, and there are thousands of people like this guy. So over the weekend, this is what he posted on his X account. Listen to this. The thing about Stephen Miller is not that he is the brains behind Trumpism. Yes, he is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulses of the Trumpist movement and translates them into policy. But that's not what's interesting about Stephen Miller. It's not brains, it's bile. Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater. You can see this just by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats hate, end quote. Now that is from the same guy that got the interview with President Trump, and he calls himself a journalist. The truth is, the vast majority of so-called journalists in America are nothing but rabid, very liberal Democrats who they only have one mission, is to win elections, and that's it. We have moved so far away from anything that even looks like journalism. And the truth is, you know, if you read any piece in the news, it doesn't matter where you get it, the Cowboy, the Pravda on the Platte, PMSNBC, CNBC, wherever, it doesn't matter. It's not really fact anymore. It's opinion. that has a little bit of fact sprinkled in. But it's not. We're so far away from the opinion page and the rest of the newspaper that it's not even funny.
You were told that Hillary had a 98% chance of winning the 2016 election. You were told that COVID came from bats. You were told that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. You were told that during Joe Biden's presidency, he was cognitively fine. You were told that Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election. You were told that Trump built cages at our southern border and was keeping children in them. You were told that Trump called white supremacists very fine people. You were told that Joe Biden had no knowledge of Hunter Biden's business dealings. You were told that January 6, 2021 was an insurrection. You were told that Trump called our fallen soldiers suckers and losers. You were told that videos of Joe Biden shaking hands with the air and talking about recent conversations that he had had with deceased world leaders and forgetting his own cabinet members' names were just cheap fakes. You were told that an El Salvadorian national who was an alleged gang member, wife beater, and human trafficker was just a good old dad from Maryland. You were told that Trump and Putin are very good friends. You were told that plexiglass, a mask, and standing 6 feet away from someone would prevent the spread of COVID. You were told that healthy children and pregnant mothers should get the COVID vaccine. I'm just wondering, at what point are you going to start to question what you're being told by our media?
Exactly the point. Now, let me tell you why and explain to you why they believe you'll buy all of that stuff. Well, they think that you are so dumb that you'll believe whatever they say. Now, here's this that soundbite I was referring to. This is from Don Lemon from a while ago, but this is one of my favorites, but it's literally what the Democrats think of you.
And obviously it's false. And look, he also knows deep in his heart that Donald Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map if you had the letter U and a picture of an actual physical crane next to it. He knows that this is, an administration defined by ignorance of the world. And so that's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's the smart one, and y'all elitists are dumb.
But that is exactly what they think of you. If you voted for Donald Trump, clearly you're the uneducated one, and you're stupid. And there's no way possible that they lost the election. Which, by the way, over the weekend, did you hear Kathy Griffin claim that the election was stolen? Now, I thought that was election denial. I thought if you're going to deny the election, then you are a criminal, and how dare you question our democracy? But now they've gone back on that. Nah, since it's Donald Trump, it's okay.
One of my big questions is, who the hell cares what Kathy Griffin thinks about anything?
Exactly.
I don't understand that. Just go back to that interview with the president. Here's some news guy that nobody's even heard of talking to the president of the United States. They didn't come here to listen to you, Babylon and Poke. They came here because they wanted to hear the president. There are all these people that think they are somebody, and yet nobody wants to hear them.
Well, and that's exactly the point. Now, if I were to get an interview with Donald Trump, first of all, I would try to move heaven and earth to be able to get wherever I had to get to do the interview with Donald Trump. And I would have it prepared all the way in every single question. And frankly, I don't even know that I'd be able to open my mouth if I was sitting in the Oval Office. But that's because I'm actually a journalist. Now, let me give you a couple of examples here. I've got some mail. I got some mail over the weekend because of the podcast episode I did on Saturday. Absolutely entirely opinion. But I had a chance to get together with my friend Josh Jennings, who works for Glenn Beck, and this guy named Justin Robert Young, who's got a pretty sizable podcast called We're Not Wrong. It's entertaining. I would argue that there's a lot of stuff they're wrong about, but anyway, we sat down to talk about the Elon and Trump food fight, which, by the way, is I think the episode is called a Titanic food fight. But anyway, that was the whole point of the show. And over the weekend, I got some mail about that from the well, I would call him my loyal opposition. You know, when you when you get not hate mail, but mail that's critical of an episode that you did, you know that you're doing something right. And so we're going to take a break, and when I come back, I'm going to read you that or parts of that piece of mail, and then we're going to continue about this whole Elon and Trump thing. I've got some very, very, very exclusive audio. In fact, the audio is exclusive only to Cowboy State Politics, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure you're never going to be able to find it anywhere else because it's completely made up. But it's funny, and we'll get to it when we come back.
U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Been told that Donald Trump is the crazy one, that he's the boomer rube, that he has no idea what he's doing, and he is responsible for everything. And yet we almost elected this person.
You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
And to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past, but the future. I'm doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need.
Oh, Lord.
Aren't you glad we've been unburdened?
I've been unburdened by what has been. I don't know. I probably got that one here somewhere. The point is that you've been told over and over and over that Donald Trump is the stupid one. And you are even dumber. Dumber is not even a word, but if you're dumber for even voting for him. But that's what the media is. And that's what they do. So, like I said, when I came before the break, I got some interesting email from, I guess, the referring to the podcast I did on Saturday. And the whole point is that it was completely opinion, and that's all it was. And when you do a show that is all opinion, let me put it this way: I try to make it obvious that what's opinion and what's fact. That's why when I go through the all the articles for the show, I try to tell you, okay, this one is from this news outlet, this one's from the Daily Wire, this one's from Fox News, and the reason I do that is so that you can go verify those things for yourself. So on Saturday, we had some very exclusive audio about Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And, it's audio you're not going to find anywhere else, and it could be maybe just entirely made up. But there's this big food fight going on between Elon and Donald Trump, and, this may be where it started. Play cut number 3.
What most people don't realize is that Trump wasn't just on Epstein's island. Trump is Jeffrey Epstein. Think about it. It's the only thing that makes sense. I'd stake the lives of 4 of my 36 children on it.
Exactly right. And in response, here is what Donald Trump said. Number 5.
Elon is a fraud. I heard the rockets he's sending up aren't actually landing. Elon's just playing the tape in reverse. Many people are saying so. He's fake news. I don't think he even exists. I've never seen him before. I'll bet no one has.
Well, so over the weekend, I kind of thought maybe this whole thing would die down a little bit and they might be able to come to, some sort of arrangement. And, in any fight like this, somebody has to make the first move. So in this case, it may have been Elon Musk. Cut number 4.
If I had a message to Donald, it would be, please let me come back. Let's start Doge up again, just like it was before, and let's pretend none of this ever happened. I really miss getting to sleep in my tent on the White House lawn. Donnie, please, I'm begging you to take me back.
And of course, the last one, since we're having so much fun, let's go to cut number 6.
Elon once stepped on a rake, and you know what happened? It hit him right in the Tesla coals. Do you get it? It's Tesla, all computer, but also testicles, which I'm told Elon barely has. Anyway, that's locker room talk. God bless America and Lee Greenwood, and screw China.
I think I know how Orson Welles felt with the War of the Worlds broadcast.
Exactly right. Well, anyway, so we got some hate mail, not hate mail, critical mail from one of my loyal opposition. Here's what it says. Okay. Quoting now. Okay, I'll bite. You speak about just facts, news versus opinion. Well, that pod with those 2 guys managed to be neither of those. It was beyond opinion. It was a couple of hens clucking gossip. I know you saw that. I don't know how these 2 voices were, or who they were, but those guys are not only delusional, they're a pair of vitriolic, gossiping meanies. How did you not push back on them, shilling for the most toxic humans on planet Earth? And it goes on for about 14 pages. Thank you for the letter. The truth is, you got to have some opinion and some fact. And, you got to know what's what. When facts are presented on this program, it's very clear that that's what they are. Also, when it is opinion, I mean, come on, you get 3 opinion guys in a room and you expect that there's going to be any facts floating around? Well, anyway, there wasn't. But it's a great podcast. I enjoyed doing it. And I think it's pretty entertaining. If you should go back and listen to it. I think it's called The Titanic Food Fight. And anyway, I thought it was a good time. Did you listen to it, Agent 29?
No, I have a life.
No, well, I have a life too. It's doing this program.
So we have some entertainment coming up whenever you decide you want it. We have a name that we use for that segment where I play a soundbite and then David reacts to it. But we're not going to use that one. So Y'all need to
Yeah,
come
let's
up
just
with
go
a
ahead
name
and do
for
that segment. So here's what we're going to do. Agent 29 has some sound bites queued up. And the point is that I've never heard them before, or he thinks I've never heard them. And we're just going to get my response. So if you're listening to the broadcast and you come up and you think you have a good name for this segment, go ahead and send it to us, and we'll name that segment, whichever one we like the most. You know, and we're not probably going to consider all suggestions, but if we like one, we might. So go ahead and hit play on the first.
Okay, this first one has two sheriffs.
Two sheriffs, okay.
One is Canadian.
All right. They have sheriffs in
the
Canada?
other is an American.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a
Mountie.
Law enforcement officer.
Mounted police, or?
He wore a blue costume. It didn't.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door, because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else.
So wait
Somebody's
a minute.
breaking in your.
So if somebody is breaking into your house to steal your car keys, you should just let them have it. I saw a meme over the weekend that one of it says, you know, if you shoot somebody that's robbing your house, you obviously don't care about the life of the person breaking into your house. And the response to that, of course, is if you're breaking into my house, you value my things more than your life, and you're probably going to get shot for it. But go ahead and play number 2.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. We have a gun safety class we put on every other Saturday, and if you take that, you'll shoot a lot better, and hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
Exactly right. We don't have to incarcerate them. That's how we deal with things in America. You know, if you're breaking into my home, just be aware there won't be any warning shots. Ammunition is expensive, and so I just assume if you get through the deadbolt on the door and the dogs don't tear you limb from limb, then you know, you'll probably have 3 or 4 or 10 holes in you, depending on which handgun I get my hands on, or the 12 gauge.
So this next one is Greg Gutfeld.
I love him.
He's on the 5, and this is about a 2-minute soundbite. So he starts off good. There's a little bit in the middle, and then the end of it to me is terrific. So
all right, go ahead.
Here we go.
Hit play.
Not convicted of anything, left to rot in a foreign prison.
He has been convicted.
He has not.
Yes, he has. Hey, he's illegal. He's been arrested. And get this, he's not an American citizen. If you want to spend all your attention trying to protect a human trafficker, you can do that. What I love about this is that in order to find this out, we had to send him to El Salvador, which created this unstable hysteria among camera-chasing Democrats, which forced this guy's crimes into plain view. Suddenly the Maryland dad, and that's what you called him, was no ward cleaver, more like Freddy Krueger, a wife-beating gangbanger, human smuggler. So if the Dems hadn't run to his defense, we might not have seen how bad they are and how stupid your party is. And it's not about the man, says Van Hollen. The Dems compelled us to feel for him. They wanted his name in our heads. I have seen that picture more times than I've seen pictures of my dog, Gus. Why does the media always use one picture? This guy, I mean, look, the picture is supposed to tell you, hey, he's a normal guy. You know, he doesn't look at child porn. He doesn't embezzle kids. Just look at him with his backward hat. You know, they demanded that we abide by their outrage narrative. What they didn't count on was that their poster child for persecution was actually the persecutor. And unlike Van Hollen, I am sincere when I say that scumbag is irrelevant. Not Van Hollen, but he is a scumbag. The criminal.
Yes, he is.
It's the demand that the media and the Democrats have for us to accept their narrative. They did this with George Floyd. They did this with Michael Avenatti. They did this with Jussie Smollett. They did this with BLM. They did this with Greta Thunberg. They did this with Joe Biden. And they did this with Hamas. Did I say BLM yet?
Yes.
Okay. Every narrative that they feed us turns out to be horribly wrong. They're either a poor judge of character or they don't give an F whether they're telling the truth or not. The Dems can only blame themselves, Jessica, because they compelled themselves.
Okay, so Greg Gutfeld is exactly right. It was the Democrats that forced the truth. And this is ironic because the Democrats really don't care about the truth. And, you know, this is going to be... Here's the trouble with long sound bites like that, Agent 29. There are so many different soapboxes that I have to pull out to go after this one. But first, Democrats don't care about facts. Now, I'm not saying all Democrats. I'm saying the ones that are in power: Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Well, she's not in power anymore. Chris Van Hollen, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi. All these folks, they don't really care about the facts. Conservatives, a lot of the time, we tend to ask ourselves the question, how do these people sleep at night? You lie so much on TV. How is it possible that you can lay your head on your pillow and fall asleep and not be worried about all the lies that you told? Well, it's because they have a completely different worldview than most of us do. You see, if you believe that the ends justify the means, that means that it doesn't matter what you do to get to your end goal. The end goal is so important. That is illegal immigration and winning elections. That's so important. Then we can tell any lie that we want, which is why the Democrats end up constructing a whole bunch of mini narratives. And last week on the program, I went to great lengths to explain this idea of narratives. What is a narrative? A narrative is a story. It's a story that is concocted to explain a certain set of circumstances from a certain point of view. And remember, it's nothing more than a story. So the narrative is that this guy is a Maryland dad. Look at him. He is such a family man. He has a baseball cap on. I mean, he looks, just like you and me. But he's not a U.S. citizen. He beats his wife. He's a human trafficker. Now, would all of us have known all of those facts about this Garcia character if the Democrats hadn't focused so much on him? Had they not run with the narrative straight out of the gate first? Well, the answer to that is no, but it's because of the Democrats' actions that now we know all the truth. But if you'll notice, the Democrat media, they've kind of been a little bit quiet about Garcia and him being a Maryland man. Why? Because their lie has been exposed. You see, the Dems are interested in instant gratification. That is, whatever narrative they can use at the time to suit their immediate political purpose, and then they move on because they know that they have the media in their pocket. And there's, they know that if they're caught on any of this stuff, the media will just drop it, and then they'll move to Orange Man Bad. And I loved the comment that Gutfeld said, we're forced to, they want to force us to abide by their outrage narrative, that they are so outraged that this guy got sent to El Salvador without a trial. Well, he had 2 trials. You see, the Democrats don't care about telling you the truth. And again, this goes back to the segment earlier on in the show when, the Democrats really don't care about facts. They don't care about telling you the truth. And if you're trying to talk politics with them, most of the time you're not going to get anywhere because of things like this. That they want you to accept their narrative, and their narrative becomes so pervasive in the media. They think that if they just keep pounding you and pounding you and pounding you and pounding you, then you'll accept what it is. It's the whole thing. You repeat a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. And, we're quickly moving to a place where that's just not going to cut it anymore. Because while the mainstream media still is kind of omnipresent, there's a lot of other news sources, this program included, that are, taking back some of that airspace, some of that airtime. And it's not, this program, for example, doesn't have anywhere near the audience of some of the other Democrat shows. Though we are number 35 on the list of the 100 podcasts you have to listen to in 2025. So that's saying something. But the Democrats, this whole Maryland man thing, I wish that, we had a louder megaphone on the right so that we could use it to expose the hypocrisy and the lies of the left. Fascinating sound bites, which, by the way, if you want to name that segment, go ahead and send me an email or send me a text message. The email is david@cowboystatepolitics.com, or you can hit me up on social media, Facebook, whatever. Let's just come up with a name for that soundbite. Now, earlier on in the show, I told you that I had received new information about the big, beautiful bill, and it kind of made me change my mind about it. And I found this piece over the weekend. It's entitled, "I was against Trump's big, beautiful bill, but Stephen Miller changed my mind." Now, here's the biggest problem with it, and this came out during my interview with Jim Paff, where he said, "Well, it's not an omnibus bill; it's a reconciliation bill." And Stephen Miller's argument is that with a reconciliation bill, you can't spend, right? It's not a budgetary bill. It's one that changes finances. Well, I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, because Obamacare was passed with a reconciliation process. So that was a giant spending bill. So don't tell me that we can't spend. But anyway, here's what the piece says, and then I'll explain why I've kind of changed my opinion about this big, beautiful bill. So here goes from the Blaze, and I quote: "After the House narrowly passed President Trump's big, beautiful bill, in true Washington fashion, it's already been reduced to an acronym, the BBB. The usual suspects sounded the alarm. Libertarians and deficit hawks recoiled. Elon Musk, the former Doge chief, called it a disgusting abomination. He warned that it would pile another $2.4 trillion onto the national debt over the next decade. Senator Rand Paul slammed it as hypocritical, saying Republicans can't keep pushing tax cuts without real spending cuts to match. Now, I sympathized with all those, and up until this point, I'm pretty much with all of those arguments. I flinched at the $1 trillion price tag. My immediate thought was, this is what Democrats and GOP sellout redcoats do, not fiscal conservatives. The BBB is the first major Republican bill in decades that doesn't bend to Democratic narratives. It doesn't apologize for putting American citizens first. Then Stephen Miller showed up onto the scene. While critics accused the bill of being just a bloated omnibus, remember, that was my argument, Miller pushed back. He took to X to argue that BBB isn't some lobbyist-driven monstrosity. It's a focused, unapologetic conservative package. Secure the border, overhaul welfare, revive economic growth unleashed by the 2017 tax cuts. And for the first time in a long time, I decided to hear the argument out. I didn't need much convincing on the border security, but Miller pointed out something by the corporate left media had barely mentioned, that the BBB only funds the border wall, both physical infrastructure and new tech. Republicans have promised that since 2016, nearly a decade later. Now we finally have a bill that delivers. This isn't more messaging stuff. The bill puts $45 billion towards border security, the largest commitment in U.S. history. It increases immigration and customs enforcement detention capacity by over 800%. And it goes on and on and on. There's some things with the NFA that are in there. If it passes, you don't have to wait a year to get a suppressor. I mean, it goes on and on. There's a lot of good things in there. But one of my biggest problems with the BBB is that $2.4 trillion price tag. And that's kind of a misnomer because of who did the math. Now, in Wyoming, we have the Legislative Service Office, and they score bills all the time. If there's a bill that has a spending impact, you'll see a little, budget note, fiscal note. That's what it's called. And a lot of times you read through them and you think, well, I don't know that that's entirely correct. It seems like there's a bunch of assumptions there. Well, there are assumptions in the BBB because the Congressional Budget Office's analysis focuses on those having to pay for tax cuts. That's what it's focused on. See, the BBB makes permanent the Trump tax cuts that were passed in 2017. Now, let me ask you a question, Agent 29, and I knew this would get your hackles up, which is why one of the reasons I picked this article. But do you have to pay for tax cuts?
Do you have to pay for tax cuts?
Yes.
There is this assumption all the time that we can't cut anything. And that's where that comes from, that mentality. You hear it in committees constantly. Okay, you want to cut property taxes in Wyoming? How are you going to pay for that? The best way to pay for it is quit spending.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it any better than that.
But see, there's this lie on the left that if you give citizens a tax cut, then that's decreased revenue, and you have to replace that revenue somewhere.
Well, there is the economic factor that when taxes lighten up, revenues often increase, and that's not necessarily the case in Wyoming, which is where my mind is at.
Oh,
Not
I don't know if it
necessarily.
is.
Not necessarily. It's true everywhere, but it's not quite the same as it is on the federal level, my opinion.
No, I think you're exactly right. Well, the Democrats try to convince us that all tax cuts have to be paid for. Well, that's a ridiculous argument because you're literally reducing the amount of money that you're bringing in. And, the vast majority of money that is generated in America comes from capitalism. It comes from the free market. Now, it's true that taxes make up a huge percentage of the government's income, but it's not all of it. And if you give a tax break to American citizens, you don't have to pay for that. It's not like you have to cut a check to say, well, I gave this person a tax cut, so here's my check to cover that. That's not how it works. And the spending drives the taxes. Okay, so if you're not going to do anything about the spending, then you're going to increase taxes. I mean, it's almost a 1-to-1 relationship.
Yeah, that was effectively my point. Is they have this zero sum gain idea.
Yes.
If you cut the income, then you got to make it up because we can't cut the spending. We can't cut back on that. In fact, if we fail to increase it sufficiently from year to year to year, that's the same as a cut.
Right. So here's what the Democrats' flawed argument. And listen to this. Back to the piece. And I quote, the BBB extends the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, one of the clearest drivers of economic growth during Trump's first term. That's what triggered the $2.4 trillion deficit estimate, according to the CBO. But here's the twist. The CBO's figure isn't based on new spending. It's based on continuing tax relief. And so the CBO is operating on the idea that you have to pay for tax cuts. That's where the big lie is at. The CBO says these tax cuts are going to continue, and therefore that's increased spending. I mean, that's voodoo Washington math is what that is. The real cause of the deficit isn't lower taxes. It's decades of spending on bloated welfare, bureaucratic waste, and corporate handouts that DOGE identified. Exactly the kind of garbage that the BBB cuts. Even ABC News, buried in the middle of a critical write-up, admitted that the bill would cut taxes by $3.7 trillion and reduce spending by $1.2 trillion. Now, if that's not a conservative win, I don't know what is. Letting the 2017 tax cuts expire over CBO scoring fears would amount to a massive tax hike on the working and middle classes. Extending them strengthens the economy, boosts small businesses, and keeps the government from choking growth just to massage a deficit number. Now, and it goes on and on and on. But my point here is that giant price tag that the media has been reporting is the result of the same budgeting lie that government uses all the time, that you have to pay for tax cuts, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, if you want a Wyoming example, think about the Senate File 69, which reduced property taxes by 25%. Now, what you heard from every county and community is, oh my God, that we're going to have to fire policemen and fire firefighters, and we're not going to have smooth roads, and we'll just chew them all up and we'll all have gravel roads. Well, that's not at all true, simply because every community has a bloated budget. And if you want any evidence of that, go to Rock Springs and look at all the stupid buildings that town pays for. The theater where they hold drag shows, the Civic Center, the Recreation Center. All of those things are clearly outside of the role of government. In Sheridan, go look at what's right beside the courthouse. It's the ugliest darn flower garden I've ever seen in my life. I heard somebody over the weekend call it the Sheridan County cattle chute is what they called it.
Consider Cheyenne, $197,000 to study where to put a passenger rail.
Yep, high-speed rail, the biggest boondoggle that exists in American politics. But the truth is that the BBB is actually a good bill. Is it the conservative home run that we would all want? No. Does it cut spending? Yep. Does it cut taxes? Yep. Does it do a whole bunch of other things that most conservatives would agree with? Absolutely.
That's another point too, and I would liken it. It's incrementalism, and that's something that we don't do very often. We want to hold out until we get the perfect bill and we get everything we wanted. and we end up walking away with nothing. That was true on the gun-free zones thing. In my view, what we did is unconstitutional.
Yes.
But it's closer to constitutional than we were, so we're moving in the right direction, and I voted for it.
Yeah, I mean that's another good example of a bill that is, and well, let me back up on that. Conservatives have to get more acquainted with the idea of incrementalism. The left has been using this for a really long time. They take a little bit, take a little bit, take a little bit more, and then pretty much you find out that we have a giant bloated government, both at the state level and at the federal level. Well, there's no reason why conservatives can't do that. Just because you don't get everything you want doesn't mean that you throw the rest in the trash bin. Incrementalism is okay, and if the left has been successful with it, I see no reason why we shouldn't be. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the riots and dig more into the stack of stuff. This thing's getting huge, man. I thought you were going to clean up this weekend, Ken. And what happened? More in a minute. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Documented to be almost always right, 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to opine about, go ahead and give me a call. Maybe we'll talk about it. Over the weekend, did you hear that Riley Gaines has decided to punch back at gymnast Simone Biles? Oh, this has been a fascinating dust-up. And, it's between two very successful female athletes. The only difference is one of them really has never had to compete against a man. Now, Riley Gaines absolutely had to. She had to give up a first-place trophy to a man several times. Well, Gaines has been pulling no punches with a blunt response to Simone Biles' insults in a spat over trans athletes. Conservative anti-trans activist Riley Gaines couldn't resist going for a low blow in her ongoing online spat with gold medal winning gymnast Simone Biles. In her latest reply in the back and forth between the pair, Gaines referenced convicted sexual predator Larry Nassar, the former Team USA doctor who abused Olympic legend and others female gymnasts. Quote, all the horrific sexual abuse Simone Biles witnessed and spoke out against caused by one man, yet she believes women should be forced to strip naked in front of men to validate the man's feelings. Now, you know how many gold medals you'd have to have in order to, in your inclusive dream came true? 0. Nasser is serving 40 to 175 years in prison for abusing hundreds of gymnasts. Now, this all started from Biles blasting Gaines on X for criticizing the Minnesota softball team that included transgender player Marissa Rothenberger. The pitcher threw a shutout and helped bring a state championship home to Champlain Park High School. To be expected when your star player is a boy, Gaines wrote in response to a photo of the team celebrating. So again, here you have a star athlete, a gold medalist, saying that, maybe men competing against women is okay. We have to validate everybody's feelings. And this is kind of what you were referring to earlier on in the broadcast, Agent 29, that you have, we don't focus on facts anymore. Rather, we focus on, feelings and opinion, and, however it makes you feel, that's what we should do. Well, first, there is a reason why we have women's sports, and it's absolutely shocking to me that an athlete of the caliber of Simone Biles, which, by the way, you remember her in the Olympics when she just said, "Yeah, I'm not going to compete anymore." She just went home. I mean, you're representing the United States of America. You're on the Olympic team, and you're saying that it's okay if men compete against women. By the way, Riley Gaines, I have enormous respect for. I've interviewed her on the program. It's been a while ago, maybe a year and a half, something like that. It's a fascinating interview. You should go back and listen to it. Anyway, so Riley, keep on punching away at, not literally, Simone Biles. And let's do away with all this stupidity of men playing in women's sports. Yeah, and did you watch any of that softball match, Agent 29? No? Well, you've got a male pitcher, and he's just smoking the softball in there. Well, it's no wonder why he pitched a shutout, because he's probably throwing the ball about 20 to 30 miles an hour faster than any of those girls have ever seen it. I mean, the truth is that there are differences between men and women. You know why women don't play baseball? Because men have faster reflexes and are able to hit that baseball. Not to say that women can't, but I'm saying that most of them can't. That's why women play softball. Yeah, most men can't hit a baseball. But anyway, it's ridiculous. So let's go back to this, all this riot stuff. I mean, I'm sure we're all going to be watching this for a while. But did you notice all the flags? That there are Palestinian flags and there are Mexican flags and there are flags from just about every other country. I'm sure there's some rainbow flags in there too. But what really is happening is it's vindicating Donald Trump and leaving the Democrats really with no moral standing whatsoever. This is a piece from Miranda Devine, and I think it may have been published on Fox News. The minute the foreign flags came out in the violent anti-ICE protests in L.A. over the weekend, that's when President Trump won the moral high ground. An iconic image showing a masked man on a motorcycle circling a burning car while holding aloft a giant Mexican flag against the backdrop of black and acrid smoke. And I don't have the motorcycle picture, but I do have this picture. It's very similar. The smoke and burning cars all around, and it's the Mexican flag being raised. Now, the president couldn't have asked for a better advertisement for his tough border policies. He always said that the millions of illegal aliens who swarmed over the border under President Joe Biden was an invasion. And here were the invaders making his point for him. As a result, the Democrats have no moral standing. They are moored in no man's land, owning Biden's vision and the violent masked agitators waving any flag but America's. They own the arson and the looting and the attacks on police and federal agents. They own the funding mechanisms for the rent-a riots that are traced back to their donors and the corrupt politicians and donors at Act Blue. Now that Elon Musk is gone, their street muscle has moved from torching Tesla dealerships to trying to block deportations. Their poster boy is Garcia. The illegal alien gangbanger they tried to repackage as a harmless Maryland man and transform into their latest George Floyd martyr. Too bad. Their lawfare might have gotten him undeported from El Salvador back to the U.S. soil, but now we see more clearly who he is, and the Trump administration's decision to deport him looks even the more justified. The Department of Justice has charged him with human trafficking of thousands of illegal aliens, including children and MS-13 gangbangers. Federal prosecutors allege that he is an MS-13 member, too, and participated in violent crime, including murder, trafficked children, firearms, and narcotics, and abused women under his control. The article goes on, but the point is that we have an idea that was vindicated through Donald Trump, or for Donald Trump. The Democrats have done all of the work for him, and they are the ones that have shown this Garcia guy to be exactly who he is, a human trafficking, gang-banging wife beater. That's exactly who he is, and I don't think that it matters which person goes back and forth and says that, well, his hands didn't have tattoos on, or it's that idiot from ABC claiming, well, he's just a Maryland man, or it's Chris Van Hollen traveling to El Salvador to help spring him from prison while offering him a margarita. All of those things vindicate Trump's argument. It is almost as if the Democrats are filming every campaign speech for are filming the next campaign ad for any sort of Republican in the next election. And just think about it, Ken. Could you ask for a better campaign video? I mean, there is no way that you could possibly do that.
Well, that was my reaction when I first saw that. Is there's your invasion right there.
Right there, man. That picture, it's the peaceful protests.
I know a little bit about what it's like to be invaded, I think.
I think so. And that's exactly what's happening in Los Angeles right now. They're being invaded. We are being invaded. And I mean, there's no question about it. California has the highest population of illegal aliens of any state. And I heard estimates over the weekend. I mean, we're talking 2 to 5 million ender aliens in one state. I don't know what you do with that, and it's exactly what we were talking with Shander from Sundance. That I don't know what you do with this. I mean, do you crack down? Do you clean out the streets? Do you send in the U.S. military? Do you let it burn to the ground? I mean, I don't know what you do, except of course campaign on it. That is the greatest campaign commercial that Trump could have asked for any conservative Republican that is on his side. And it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I can't believe, well, I mean, it's the Democrats, so of course we can believe what's going on. Here's a story that I've been wanting to get to for a while, and I just saw it sitting on the top of the stack of stuff. And I'm an Eagle Scout, and I always say I'm an Eagle Scout from the time when being an Eagle Scout actually meant something. Well, this is a piece from The Blaze, and I think it was published, let's see here. Yeah, about a week ago. But it's entitled Trail Life USA Takes Up the Mission Abandoned by the Boy Scouts. And if you haven't been paying any attention, the Boy Scouts are no longer called the Boy Scouts. It's called Scouting America, where we let girls join the Boy Scouts. There's that great Ben Shapiro piece. Well, how do you know that girls can't be in Boy Scouts? He says, it's in the name, Boy Scouts. So an organization's unapologetic focus on developing young Christian men finds an enthusiastic audience. And that was the genesis of the Boy Scouts from their very, very inception, to create young men with skills who are reverent, who are helpful, and just to create good citizens. And in many cases, the Boy Scouts for decades helped get children who were, I guess, arguably disadvantaged, to give them a place to where they can learn the skills and become good, solid citizens. To generations of American men, the Boy Scout oath is as familiar as the Lord's Prayer. Those 40 words encapsulate a legacy of 100 years in the making. Quote, in Trail Life, fathers can find a community of like-minded men who also want to make sure their sons grow up to be great Christian men. And it took a little bit longer than a decade to destroy exactly what the Boy Scouts were. The beginning of the end was March 23rd of 2013. This was the day that Boy Scouts of America voted to allow the admittance of openly gay members. The move met with pushback from parents and religious organizations who saw this supposed concession to the times as a betrayal of the BSA's founding principles and predicted that it was the first step in a radical reinvention of the storied institution. Their fears turned out to be warranted. A scant 2 years later, the BSA lifted a ban on openly homosexual adult leaders. 3 years after that, in 2018, the organization was open to women and girls. Last February, just in time for the 115th anniversary of the Boy Scouts of America, the group rebranded under the more gender-neutral name Scouting America. It took only 12 years for the Boy Scouts to go from an organization where young men could learn to embody Christian values and American patriotism to a co-ed organization intent on indoctrinating its members with the ideals of the contemporary American left. These changes have left the BSA's traditional adherents at a loss, myself included. Fathers who grew up and thrived in the Boy Scouts could no longer trust an organization to teach sound values to their sons. Churches that partnered with the organization have had to cut ties or risk compromising their own moral teachings. Now, I have to tell you, my friends, my Boy Scout medals, they're my prized possessions. And if you were to ask me what my proudest achievement was out of all the things that I've been successful at, it would be being an Eagle Scout. And now I hesitate to tell people, yeah, well, I'm an Eagle Scout, because immediately what comes to mind now is an organization that allows openly homosexual men to be leaders and allows girls in an organization that is only for boys.
I got kicked out of Boy Scouts.
I have no doubt. What did you do?
They took us up on Casper Mountain, and it was in the middle of winter, so we had about 4 feet of snow on there. And the idea was to build a snow fort and survive.
Mm-hmm.
What does it take to do? The first thing was how to build. So I built the hole, and I started the fire within because I was cold.
Yes.
I thought Boy Scouting was about being able to start a fire.
well, it kind of is.
Apparently, you're supposed to wait for permission. Anyway, I thought if this is what this is about, I'm out. I was done.
Well, and here's the other thing. If you wonder why younger people aren't interested in serving their community, it's not just younger people. I mean, it's people our age. It's because they haven't learned that. Now, how often do we hear, and I've got a lot of friends, we've both got a lot of friends who are in government at any, at a variety of levels. And one of the number one complaints I hear at the local level is, well, it's so hard to find people to sit on boards. You know why? It's because people don't really believe in service anymore. When I was growing up and in the Boy Scouts, that was the main thing. Yeah, you went camping and went fishing and hiking and had a good time, but you could not become an Eagle Scout without a major project that is nothing more, that is a service to the community. Well, we don't teach that anymore. And now we have an organization that really is more devoted to radical leftist ideology than to creating good, strong, principled Christian men. But fear not, there's another organization that I'm increasingly enamored with, and it's called Trail Life. And so I think that there are always opportunities for young men to learn the skills that they need, and there are always churches and other organizations that help find that. And I can't tell you how happy I am that there is another organization that has picked up the mantle that was dropped by the Boy Scouts. And you know what I ought to do is I'll dig out the medals. And well, by the way, I can do that tomorrow because I'm going to be broadcasting from my house. I haven't told you guys, but Agent 29 is playing hooky the rest of the week. I mean, I give you a job and you just run away. What's going on here?
Cheyenne.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll be down there for about 3 days. I will be talking to the University of Wyoming. I'll be talking to the military department about their upcoming budget requests, and I'll spend a day on Capital Finance Committee listening to what are we going to do with our $30 billion? How can we How can we make it more?
Yeah, why? God, that is so frustrating that we have $30 billion in the bank. And, well, now, I mean, we've got conservatives in charge of the appropriations committee. So apparently we won't be spending that much money.
I will say one of the things that they say about it is basically it's the third leg of income. So they will tell you that money, those funds, and the stuff we make off of that. That means that we don't have to raise taxes, and that kind of goes back to that zero-sum game that we were talking about earlier. My problem with it, in some principle, I like having a nest egg. Certainly, you want to have some reserves, but at what point is enough? And the other problem is, government is much larger in Wyoming than we actually feel, because so many of these things are not really on the budget, and they're being paid for in ways that are not coming directly out of our pockets. If we had to raise enough taxes to pay for what we spend in Wyoming,
Lord,
it'd be a whole different thing.
Absolutely. And and here's the other thing that most people don't realize, that the number one industry in Wyoming, let me ask you, you probably already know the answer to this, so I won't ask you. But many people think that the number one industry in Wyoming is mining, that it's our natural resources. It's not. Or perhaps it's tourism. You know, we got a lot of people that come to the state during the summer. They spend a tremendous amount of money, so maybe that's the number one industry. It's not. And we're pretty sure that it's not agriculture, cattle ranching. The truth is, the number one industry in Wyoming is government.
I don't think you should call government an industry, because when you think about the definition of industry,
it's private.
It's creating something.
Yeah.
It's being industrious.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you talk about it otherwise? You know, when you're comparing it to.
I get your point. It struck me. You know, words do mean things.
Words do mean things. It's true. And here's the problem, and one of the reasons why I bring that up, that we in Wyoming, we tend to believe that government is an industry. And think about it, right? One of the better examples is Buffalo, Wyoming. I would argue that 75% of the population there work for some form of government. You know, you have the Forest Service, the BLM, city, county. There, I don't know if it still is, but there was a DEQ office. There's the school. I mean, there's a huge amount of people that work for government in one way, shape, or form. The courts, and so we tend to think that it's an industry, but it's really not. I mean, government cannot create economic development. And that's what fries me when you got all these communities in there and their business parks. Sometimes they work. I'll admit that. You know, if you go up to the business park here in Sheridan, it's probably the only successful one in the state. But there's a lot of other communities that built business parks, in quotation marks, that have never had a single business on them. I think the one in Buffalo has been done for 10 years, and they're just trying to sell the property because nobody wants to put a business there. Now, here's the reason why why government can't create business. And it's, when you think about it, it makes sense. So let's say Agent 29 gets a job with YDOT. Well, YDOT's got some pretty good benefits and some pretty good wages, and it works out pretty good for Agent 29. He's got a paycheck, and he can go to the grocery store and spend his YDOT money and get food for his family, and it works out pretty good for him. But he's being paid with tax dollars that were levied from industry. So, you know, a private business, you spending money. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different sources of tax revenue, property taxes, et cetera. But all of that is just recycling tax dollars. So it's not actually creating anything. The only way that you grow an economy is that you create something new. You come up with some new idea, some new product, some new method. You start a business. Maybe you're mowing people's yards. Maybe you're installing sprinkler systems, which I need to find somebody to do that really quick. But you know, you create something new, right? Something that wasn't there before, and that generates revenue. And then we're able to tax that revenue, which is what Agent 29 gets paid with, tax dollars. And so anytime you hear a government say, whether it's your city or your county or the state, you hear them utter the words business development, you should immediately turn to the side and go, because business development is a load of crap and you should just spit on it anyway, because it never works. It's just a way to use your tax dollars and make other politicians look good.
Actually, it does work in another way. And it's not a good way.
No.
Whenever you have a lot of money and you have people with a lot of power and you have people that want an advantage, anytime we have economic development program, that is, I'm not saying it always goes south and that there's corruption in it, but man, it's really hard to resist.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things begin to get corrupt. You know, you grease one side of the skillet, and anyway.
Well, a good example. So we're going to have this shooting sports complex. And this is, oh man, this is a toughie for conservatives, but it shouldn't be. The state decided that we're going to have this big, well, originally it was a $10 million shooting complex, which is now closer to $20 million. I think it's like 19.8, 19.6, something like that. Well, the original idea is the state would get the thing going. And then we would turn this over to a private party to run this whole shooting sports complex. And the idea is that there's only a few of these, world-class outfits in the entire country. And why shouldn't we have one in Wyoming? Well, now there's no question. I mean, the idea that it would be turned over to a private party, that's gone by the wayside. We're not doing that anymore. Why? Because you have tax dollars supporting it, right? If you have tax dollars supporting something, well, I mean, why would you have to publicize it? Why would you have to generate any more revenue? Because you have that safety net that's there. Well, taxpayers are on the hook for it. We certainly wouldn't want to go back on our word, which is the argument I heard over and over and over during the last session. The bill was to actually release the funds. And long story short, it jumped from 10 to 20 million. And the argument from a lot of conservatives, namely me, was, no, we agreed to 10 million. That's what we agreed to. Put the brakes on it. This thing is going to be a money suck, and it's never going to have an end. Well, now we're going to have this $20 million shooting complex, and there's no end in sight for it. The problem being it is entirely government supported. If it is going to be entirely government supported, it means it's not going to generate any new revenue because you're just recycling tax dollars.
Just to be cautious, it is not entirely government supported, and I don't disagree with anything you said, but local industries have ponied up a considerable sum of money.
Okay.
And
all right, I stand corrected.
So, yeah, there is, but it goes back to what I was talking about. Now you have this situation where you have this potentially disastrous relationship between government and private individuals.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Okay, so I'm glad that there's some private money going into it, but still, you've got the state in the middle of it. And the other part of it is I don't want the government anywhere near my firearms. It sounded like it was a good idea. And let me just give you the genesis of how this thing got started. We have a lodging tax. And the whole idea is that the lodging tax was going to raise $12 million, and it was supposed to be earmarked for, I don't remember what the projects were, but for a specific project. Well, the truth is the lodging tax raised $40 million, and it's probably way more than that right now. But this was a couple of years ago. Well, if there is a pile of money sitting around, and given the administration of state government at the time, it was controlled by a bunch of redcoats. It was probably going to be used for really bad stuff, drag queens and drag shows and giving condoms to, I mean, you name it. I mean, it's going to be used for bad stuff. So the thinking was, well, let's take some of that money and let's put it towards something good. All right, so it's still spending money. It's not exactly conservative, but at the very least, we're removing the possibility of doing bad stuff with our money and maybe putting it towards good stuff.
That argument, as it was posed to me, was the money's already spent.
Yes.
So get that out of your mind. If it's already going to be spent, let's try to at least divert it towards something that maybe has some benefit.
Some value.
Admittedly, there is some value. It's going to bring a lot of people to the state. It's a little bit like when government gets involved in helping build an athletic stadium.
Yes.
A venue. There are arguments that are made there. The pure conservative, though, no.
Nope. Well, and here's the thing, and Agent 29 and I had this conversation several times. that, okay, so you voted for it, but the idea was it was going to be turned over to a private party and then the state was going to get out of it. Well, that went away. And then the conversation is, so how is this at all conservative anymore? Well, it's not, because it's government getting involved in private industry. But that's how things metastasize. And I mean, it is growing government. I mean, there are so many reasons why that shooting sports complex is not in any way conservative. But here we are. Oh, and yeah, and here's the other argument. Hey, we agreed to do this. If we say no now, we're going back on our word, which is true. But the right thing to do would have been to put the brakes on it anyway and say, if you want more money, go raise it. You don't need tax dollars. I mean, you already got 10 million. How much more do you want?
Yeah, that is a hard one. The reputation of the state was, and I was one of those that actually made that argument, because I believe once you say you're going to do something, you ought to do that. And it's a little bit like my kids. At one point, I made them a bracelet, and basically it was the first letters of Jesus wouldn't have got himself in this situation in the first place, instead of a WWJD.
Exactly.
But once you've gone down that wrong path, what's the right thing to do now? That is a tougher decision. And I made a decision that probably was the worst one I've ever done in the legislature.
I'm waiting.
Well, the other one was to come on this show and be exposed.
Well, okay, so let's just shift this whole idea from government and say that the entire thing was going to be done privately. If you have a private project that goes way over budget and there hasn't even been a shovel put in the ground yet, a responsible investor would probably look at that and say, you know what, I was in it for 10 million. I'm not in it for 20. Okay. And you would walk away. And the problem with that vote is that there hadn't been a spade put in the ground yet. Now, it's true that there had been a lot of work done to build up for it. There had been some publicity and traveling around, but we weren't anywhere close to 10 million.
Well, that 10 million have not been released yet.
No.
And I don't believe that anybody ever said at any time that this is only going to be a $10 million
No,
facility.
when the bill got started.
Yeah, the idea was that we'll get private enterprise involved in this, and the only way that I gave it my yes vote, the very first, was under the understanding that we're tipping it off and it's going to get picked up by private.
Yeah.
And then it became a quagmire, and it's one of those things that
it was government, man.
Yeah.
Government always does.
Like I alluded to, once you've gone down the wrong path, there's no right answers anymore.
No, and I think my argument with private industry, right? If you've got a project that ends up being a boondoggle and there's no end in sight and there's no end to the amount of money required, a smart investor might just look at that and say, you know what, I think I'm out. This thing is not going to work. But again, it's not private industry. It's government, and government always metastasizes and they always grow. The only thing we can do is slam the brakes on it and stop the spending. Well, just to give you kind of an update, not an update or a whatever you want to call it, a look down for the rest of the week. Agent 29 is going to be out, so we'll be broadcasting from the original Cowboy State Politics studio. So it'll be just me. I got used to having a producer. Now I don't have one for the rest of the week. So anyway, we'll see you tomorrow on Cowboy State Politics Live, 8 a.m., Tuesday through Friday. For now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.